All right, everybody. Hi, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to Master Negotiators Live. My name is J.N. Raitt. I'm an associate professor of management at McGill University, where I focus on negotiation and conflict management. So what's Master Negotiators Live? It's your weekly live meeting where you can enhance your negotiation skills. We're not going to have abstract conversations about things you can't use in your real life. We're really going to give you practical tips that you can use in your daily life. And every week I have two guests who are master negotiators, hence the name Master Negotiators Live. And they will share their experience as negotiators, as leaders, to really provide insights so you can become a better manager, a better negotiator, and a better leader. So how does this work? We actually have three segments, roughly half an hour each. The first one is called Master Negotiator Spotlight. And so this is where I'll engage in a conversation on negotiation topics with the two guests, and we'll get to know them. The second one, because I want us to be practical. So the second one is called Master Negotiators React. And so in that segment, we will react to we'll react to negotiation caught on video. A lot of times now people record themselves getting fired. And so we're going to react to somebody getting fired by Walmart, and we'll see, was it the right way to do it? Did the employee, could they have done things different, and all that stuff. And then the last segment is called Master Negotiators Q&A. And so Master Negotiators Q&A is when we answer questions from Reddit, specifically from the subreddit Negotiation and Conflict Resolution. If you're joining us, please let us know where you're joining us from, because we can't see you, right? Like, we don't know who you are and where you are. So we want to know where you're joining us from. Say hi, I'll feature it on the chat. And if you hear a quote from one of the guests or from myself that you find insightful, then share it on your profile, and you can share it with a link to this event, because at the end of the event, the whole video will be posted on it. So you can share that resource with people. So let's start this show with the first segment, which is Master Negotiator Spotlight. All right, so this is Master Negotiator Spotlight. This is where we have a discussion with my two amazing guests. And I said in my post, two of my favorite people in the field. I don't know why. I think it's just a matter of energy. For some reason, I just really like you guys. And so the first guest that we have is Ivana Caha Sediva. She's a C-suite executive with 28 years of experience at companies including Johnson Johnson and McDonald's. She has spearheaded major business deals and is a forthcoming speaker at NegotiCON 2024. Ivana also offers training in public speaking and the art of influence. Hi, Ivana.
Hi, Jan.
Thank you so much for making time for us. The second one is Barney Jordaan. He's a professor specializing in negotiation, conflict leadership, and persuasion at Vlerick Business School in beautiful Belgium. He has a background in human rights law in South Africa and co-founded a conflict management consultancy. Barney is also an internationally certified mediator and author. Hello, Barney.
Hi, Jan. Nice to work with you again. I just think we should start a mutual admiration society, it seems.
I agree. Let's be positive, right? Like, let's put positive energy into the world. Like, we don't have to be sad and dark. Mm-hmm. So the first question that I have for you guys, and maybe we can start with Ivana. But Ivana, could you tell us what drew you to the field of negotiation and what keeps you passionate about it?
Yeah, it's quite strange, isn't it? Because back in 90s, I was studying artificial intelligence, actually, neural networks. And at that time, you had to study really a lot of mathematics and all that hard stuff. And actually, I started to read books like good old Dale Carnegie, and books on body language. And I remember with my fellow students sitting in the campus and observing professors and students and second guessing, the relationships and stuff. So it's really something which is with me, even though I'm a very rational person, actually. And when I joined the corporate world, I realized originally that actually people think I'm quite good at it. and that it really helps. But it was kind of natural thing. And then I started to study it. And it's really one of the skills which can bring a lot of benefit to you, but also to the people around you. Depending on the intentions you have, it can actually help the business community, basically.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. What about you, Barney? What keeps you passionate about negotiation?
Well, Jane, it's I'm a lawyer by training, but I always say to people, I think I'm fully recovered by this stage. I love the law, I just detest the process. But I think during my legal practicals, I got my first taste of negotiation. I was awful at it most of the time, and I think what spurred me on to learn more about it is just the fact that I think I made so many mistakes. And I realized that I need to start sharpening that. Then I became, while teaching, I was involved in human rights practice in South Africa. And, in a context where people don't really have rights, the law is of little use to them. And then we through a legal practice and an advice office, we started using dialogue, negotiation, mediation techniques to try and protect people's rights, the few rights that they have. And eventually I became a academic, focusing on labor relations, employment law, collective bargaining, and gradually, while teaching at business schools, also became more involved in commercial negotiation. That's really why I still have this passion. It's also a field, I think, that's continuously developing and is in serious need of further development. The world has changed, but our theories are still pretty much stuck in a different time frame. And it's fun to teach. It's satisfactory, probably one of the most satisfactory subjects one can teach.
Yeah, I really agree with you. And I know for me, the motivation to teach it was a big challenge because it was undeniably a useful skill to teach. Mm-hmm. Whereas a lot of university classes, it could be questionable. It could be questionable whether or not you can actually teach it and whether or not it's going to be useful to students. But negotiation, everybody agrees that it's a useful skill. Everybody agrees they're scared of it. And so it really just seemed like a very exciting opportunity. And I think it's great that you guys really illustrate also one of the reasons I think the community is so rich. It's because we have people from law enforcement, from law, we have people from business, people like procurement, sales, all sorts of different backgrounds. And I think it's interesting to see how everybody in their own background has figured out, how to deal with something as complicated, but as necessary, as negotiation. So as a reminder, I see a bunch of people are joining us from Prague. A bunch of people are joining us from different places in the world. If you're listening to us, just come say hi and please react. This is a discussion. And I'd like, before we get into the questions, I'd like to ask Barney, so you said, the field has changed a lot. What do you mean by that? What's changed in the field?
Jay, and a lot of work has been done over more than a century by people like Mary Parker Follett, Rifer, Walton and McKersey. And a lot of that culminated, of course, in the very famous Getting to Yes by Fisher, Urey, and later Patton as well. But I think that work is already a couple of decades old. And while many of the principles, I think, are still sound, there's such a big gap between negotiation research and negotiation practice. A lot of the research, I think, is based on old frameworks, whereas practice has moved on. If you look at the state of negotiation theory, and maybe it's because of this is a subject that's looked at by so many different people at so many different angles, there is no conformity. We don't even know what negotiation is. There is no uniform definition. The frameworks, as I say, some of them are old, some of them just don't make sense. The research is sometimes not really satisfactory. Small samples using mostly undergraduate students with no real life experience, or maybe life experience, but no real business experience. And major conclusions are drawn from that. So what we're trying to do in the particular project I'm involved in now is actually to bring negotiation, practice, and theory closer together by looking at what practice is doing. And what can theory learn from that, but also where's the good theory and what can practice learn from some solid negotiation theory. But the world has changed geopolitically. New types of threats, hybrid warfare tactics, ransomware attacks. Those are all things that require maybe a rethink of the standard negotiation frameworks, terminology, and principles.
That's a very, very interesting point. And I have to say, so I'm mostly familiar with negotiation research in the management field. And if you look at a lot of the research that's been done since the 90s, there's been an obsession, and I'm real, like an obsession about gender. It's been, at the time, I think it made a lot of sense. But I know that I have undergrads who keep the same age every year, like I'm getting older, but like they just stay the same age. And so I kind of have, I have to update my speaking, right? And I have to say that sometimes, if you take the research from the 90s or the early 2000s about gender, they tell you things like women are meek and feeble and they need to be protected and all that stuff. And you say that to a crowd where it really is not reflected in the crowd. You see a lot of strong women. You see a lot of men who are on the softer side. It happens a lot. If you take Gen Zs and now Generation Alpha, you have people who are in between. Ton of people now don't really they don't really feel that they're part of one gender or the other one. So I think I think it's a hot take, but it's a topic I don't talk about a lot. First of all, because I don't think people really want to hear a man talk about gender. But second, I think also it stereotypes a little bit the crowd. And sometimes I talk about stereotypes and I look at the class and I feel like they're cringing, like they're not, if I talk about women tend to be poor negotiators, well, that's what the research says, from the 90s. But the McGill Hotel negotiation competition we held last year, the winning team was an all-female team of color. So, it doesn't apply to everyone. So I'd like to hear maybe, Ivana, what's your perspective on gender and negotiation?
Yeah, I guess you have the right point that it's changing over time, obviously.
Right.
And today's generation, they are very well equipped with a lot of things. What I actually find is that girls who are, at least in Europe, and at least in my part of Europe, that ladies who are like 35 or so, they sometimes still may have an ethical problem with negotiation.
Right.
Because they want, they just don't, they tell me, I don't want to manipulate. I don't like negotiation. And sometimes even when I'm discussing about, because I'm acting as a professional mentor and business coach and so on, when I'm offering them my services, quite often I have to kind of teach them negotiation through that eventually, because it appears to be a field to be discovered. But to be very honest, I have also male leaders at that age who do not know how to actually ask for things, starting with they don't ask, as simple as that.
Yeah, we had Paul Nadeau, who's a former hostage negotiator from Canada. He was on the show and he wrote a book called Damn It, Just Ask, which is really, damn it, just ask. And I think it's a great book. I think he's renewing it. He's writing a new version. But so something that I really agree with you, and I see in the class. So a lot of students come to me for advice when they're about to negotiate their job offer, and I hear something which is very much a child mentality in the body of an adult. But I hear a lot of them tell me, I'm going to be a good boy or a good girl, and I will accept whatever they offer me, and I will do such good work that they will increase my salary without me asking for it, which is very much how children behave with parents. Parents will provide, you just have to be a good boy or a good girl. But the rules have changed once you enter. It's not the same thing. Your boss is not your parent.
And I like to look into that kind of diversity issue actually on the micro level.
Yeah.
Because I kind of don't like the isms. Yeah. And for me, we on the individual level, we are different I call it microdiversity.
Right.
As long as we are interested in understanding who is the person on the other side of the table or next to me, I can then adapt my approaches, or I can teach them, or they will be reacting based on some similarities. They may not be gender relevant or whatever, culture relevant, because this is the kind of, am I more introverted, yes or no, or extroverted, yes or no? That will define much more than if I am male or female.
Yeah.
Indeed. If I could just add two things. One is linked to that. The part of the problem with negotiation research, it's not very, it's culturally skewed towards Western models and Western ways of thinking. You know, it's caters for the thinking of weird countries, westernized. What is it? Weird stands for westernized, educated, industrialized, rich, and inverted commas, democratic sometimes. But back to the issue of asking, that's the first hurdle people sometimes face. Just to ask. If you don't ask, it's no. If you ask, you might get a yes. But the next hurdle is how to deal with no.
Right.
Because that's actually when the negotiation starts. And I find people sometimes retreat when they have a no, or they become maybe too pushy, too aggressive, too competitive when they get a no. Instead of saying, what kind of a no is this?
So
definitely
there is something that
face no, or a maybe no, or no unless you can do this or that for me.
So sometimes I hear, and it's a really interesting, it's something that I've noticed, and I haven't seen research on this, so I'm starting to do research on this. It's about the asymmetry of lying. And so I see a lot of people when they're for example, imagine the situation where you have a candidate negotiating with a recruiter. And I see this all the time. The candidate says, well, thank you so much for the first offer, but I think my market worth is 20% higher. You know, here are some data points. So if you can match this, you know, we'll be good and we can be in business. And then the recruiter says, oh, no, we have a grid, like everything is fixed. You know, we don't really do that. So this is where you are in the grid. This is how much you're going to get paid. And the person takes it as nobody gets anything more than the grid. This is what they understand from it. And then they start the job. But that's not what the recruiter said. The recruiter said there is a grid. The recruiter didn't say nobody negotiates. But that's what people understand. And then I see kind of like where this explodes when the person realizes several months into the job that actually some people continued the negotiation and managed to get more. And this is where in my opinion, there is some sort of an asymmetry, because the recruiter doesn't have the feeling that they lied or misrepresented the situation, but that's what the candidate feels. Have you noticed this? I don't know,
yes.
Ivana, if you want to go.
Yes, definitely. I think it is actually changing now because of the use of artificial intelligence in hiring process. But let's stay with that old-fashioned process where you meet human along the process. Yeah.
Right.
So if you understand who is the decision maker, you don't waste your time negotiating certain stuff at certain stage.
Right.
So what I was almost unconsciously doing throughout my career, I was saying, you know, I really at this stage, I just want to understand whether we are within some reasonable range, because for me the highest priority is if I can add value, and if I actually love the job, and if I resonate with the company's vision and mission and values, you know, all that stuff. So I was not on purpose discussing the salary until I met the final decision maker, full stop. You know?
Right.
And even then, when they had some constraints or whatever, I would start talking about, okay, so how about, I don't know, free pass to the gym, or like that, or every possibility. And at the end, you can get what you want, maybe in different structure, but actually you can have what you want, really. But you need to know what you want to start with, right?
You try to delay the salary discussion for as long as possible, if you can.
No, I agree. It's a really great point. So let's start with how to prepare for a negotiation. So Barney, when you're facing an important negotiation, what are aspects that you're careful about?
Jane, there's so many things, but I think in a nutshell, and I think we all would say preparation and planning, but it's preparation and planning. So gather the information about the own situation, the environment, the other party's situation, and then the planning is, what do I do with this? How will I use this information? What will be my information disclosure strategy? What do I disclose when, how, what don't I disclose, or only disclose in little drips and drabs? What about my going in strategy? Is it going to be predominantly collaborative or predominantly competitive? Or more of the one or more of the other? And that depends on the context. It depends on the goal, depends on whom I'm negotiating with, and it depends on what we're negotiating about. But what people sometimes forget is that phase continues until the end. Because during the negotiation, you get more information and you've got to factor that into your preparation. But people sometimes come very well prepared, but they stick with the preparation they did before the negotiation started. And in the process, they miss out on a lot. That's the one thing. The other thing is you need to create a rapport. I don't believe that trust is the thing in negotiation. Because there's so many different kinds of trust. What kind of trust are we talking about? I think it's about being trustworthy ourselves. Trust is not the goal. It's being trustworthy in the eyes of others without necessarily naively trusting the other party. And it starts by building rapport in whatever way is authentic to yourself. Show interest, be respectful, be curious about the other person, connect. Maybe there's some common ground that you can connect. Create the right climate for the discussion, the right kind of mood music, because that's the way the conversation starts is critical. We send signals to the other side, subconsciously, unconsciously, about our intentions through our words, our body language, nonverbal communication. We've got to watch those. It's great to talk a good negotiation, to talk collaboration, win-win, mutual gain, whatever you want to call it. But the proof is in the pudding. How do you actually display this in a consistent and authentic way? And then I think check and adjust your frame of reference. You can't always go into a negotiation thinking exactly the same way, because it may be different contexts, maybe different issues, maybe different parties, maybe different kinds of relationships. It may be a one-on-one or a multi-party negotiation. So you always have to say, where's my mind at the moment? How do I see the process? How do I see the people I'm negotiating with? How do I see the problem we're trying to solve? I think for me, the other important thing is to agree on the process. We don't know what the outcome is going to be. That depends on both of us. But we can try to agree on the process and then trust the process to reach us, to take us to the goal that hopefully we share. And then the last thing is two things. I also don't believe that the whole deal is to get to the handshake, to get to yes. It's to get to implementation. The yes is one thing, but will it be implemented? Will the quality of the relationship be strong enough to ensure that the agreement is sustainable, and that when there are conflicts arising from this agreement, that it can be settled at the bargaining table and not in the courts? It's sort of a question that I always ask myself, whether negotiating, mediating, dealing with my own conflicts, is simply this: what can I do to completely mess up this process? And then try not to do it. The mind is a wonderful way of remembering that little phrase. So I would recommend it.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Cool one.
Sometimes I think, what would I do if I was intelligent? Like, what would an intelligent person do? No, I think what you're saying is very powerful, because I think this is something that people sometimes don't understand about managerial negotiation, which is you're going to continue working with this person on the long term. So getting to yes is great. Like, you want to get to yes, but then you also want the person to deliver what you actually agreed on. And that can be in sales, in management, whatever it is. I've seen time and time again where you have a candidate. I mostly advise students when they're on the job market. This is the bulk of the people who ask me for advice. But I've seen it time and time again. They get cornered into accepting a shitty deal that they didn't want to accept. And for some reason, they felt pressured, they signed it. And then they ask for a meeting with me, and they want to know if they can renegotiate, how to reapproach it, and maybe if they should quit. Like, nobody won. You didn't win if you force somebody to sign a contract that they're not going to honor because they're just going to quit. So this is really something that's so different. Hostage negotiation is very different. Once you've released the hostages, if you change your mind, it's too late. The hostages have been released and they can kill you now. That's finished.
Indeed. It's a short-term thing, right?
Exactly. And so at the end of the day, like they care about the hostages. They don't care about you. They don't care about the hostage taker. They care about the hostages. But in a managerial negotiation, sometimes it's worth it to make concessions if it protects the relationship on the long term. And I think sometimes that's what I see with very, very, and I'm coming back to somebody in the chat said, not all strong women, but I think it applies for negotiators. Not all strong negotiators are competent, and confident. And I agree with that. I see sometimes very aggressive negotiators who have a background of just failed relationships where every single time offers are rescinded, people are upset, people quit. It happens a lot. Barney, I don't know if you wanted to say.
No.
Okay. So Ivana, when you're in the C-suite, when you're an executive, you have to make tough decisions and you have to tackle tough negotiations. What's your process when you're going to have a tough conversation?
Oh, for the tough conversations. Well, I always start with, why are we having the conversation? What is my ultimate goal? And what is the goal for the company, for the organization? And then I look strategically at the whole thing. And I don't want to repeat what Barney said, because a lot of things, obviously, what he said is totally true. To understand the counterpart, really. And I want to underline one thing, which Barney said. It's so important. It's not assuming that we know everything, right? That when we start the difficult conversation, that you are willing to listen in the process and change your opinion, or change your approach. So actually asking more than talking, for me, is absolutely critical. And as I love the body language, I very often I use that knowledge to not to judge whether somebody is lying or whatever. I'm probably not that type of expert, but to just raise a red flag. Okay, something is going on here, and for me, it's like, okay, so let's stop and let's listen more. Let's find out. Also asking questions like, what if, or what would help you to? Relying a lot of on feelings and actually acknowledging the feelings in the difficult conversations, all those techniques which really need to become part of your personality almost in order to work. But all that, like, I can see that you are really upset, and I can understand, and you have all the right to be upset in such a situation, for instance. Such a thing actually helps us to calm down the situation. Because I'm sure people in the chat or who are listening also know that, but if we are triggered emotionally, you can argue whatever you want to. It's kind of wasted effort. Giving a good safe space for the discussion, if I see that the other part is kind of in emotions, is really very important. Now, I am now speaking from the position where I assume good intentions on the other side. So that would be a long-term relationship with one of our suppliers who are more like strategic partners and so on. I still don't assume that they tell me the truth, because they may not be telling me the whole truth. Right? They may not be directly lying, but believe me, I have met people who would kind of like
misrepresent, right? A lot of people misrepresent the truth in all sorts of ways.
And sometimes they don't know they are lying. Sometimes they can interpret data, stuff like that,
And they go to bed thinking, I didn't lie, but the other party says, no, you lied.
But one thing which I really loved about what Barney said was about the process. And I wanted to build on that a little bit. Because I see actually one of the people who made a big difference for me during my corporate life, Luboris. Hi, Lubor. And he was the kind of master negotiator in one of the companies I worked for. And he introduced to me an excellent process for negotiation and for tenders. I was always struggling with kind of keeping in mind all the nitty-gritties and feelings and everything if we were negotiating with a lot of partners and there was a big time difference.
Yeah.
And he had such a good process where we would invite all the parties during the same time. And it was like the chess, the simultaneous chess kind of play. And it was so cool that we could negotiate really fairly. We could find out all the information. We could validate. Hi, Lubor. And it was really powerful. So I think that we can be actually very creative about the process as well, if we have it in hand, obviously.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
I did some research with a colleague years ago on deceit in negotiation, and what was clear from it is that when people negotiate, they tend to suffer from what we termed ethical fading.
Yeah.
Because they frame the negotiation as a game.
Yeah.
All's love and fair is fair in love and games kind of thing, or love and war. And they find all sorts of justifications for not speaking the truth or for misleading the other party. Even if they're otherwise very honest, one tends to fall into that trap. But then one thing you mentioned, about the red flags, there was this quote from Daniel Kahneman in an interview years ago based on his thinking of the two thinking systems in the brain. And he said, we have to try and be more system 2 oriented. We are limited in our ability to think rationally, right?
Absolutely.
System 2 is slow and has limited thinking capacity. So somebody said, but does this mean you shouldn't trust your gut? He said, no. It's not trusting your gut. He says, listen to your instincts, but don't react on it until you've educated them.
Yeah. No,
So
that's
get that information that confirms that your initial feeling was correct, or maybe that's not. But very often people, and myself, we act on first instincts only, right? And I think that's part of the reason why the world is in such a mess nowadays. It's first instincts that count, and not
Yeah.
And so a lot of junior people and people who kind of appreciate being fast, and they kind of think that other people would value them based on whether they can achieve the result fast and so on. They could actually overcome that, and they are overwhelmed and they are thinking. A lot of people, even old people, a lot of old people, they are actually thinking while you are speaking.
Indeed.
No, please listen.
Indeed.
If somebody here suffers from that, please listen. You can always take few seconds after you listened to figure out your thoughts. And I really admire Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
In his interviews, there are so excellent interviews, and you can see him like he's really listening, but then he's taking his time to think about his answer, and then it's like,
yeah. No, that's extremely interesting. And going back to Barney, what you were saying about lying, I remember reading, there's a book that I use in the classroom from Lee Thompson that's called The Mind and the Heart of the Negotiator.
Fantastic book.
Great book. If you really want to see kind of like, she updates it pretty much every year. I mean, it's amazing. And there is a study that she relays in the book where it's about the perceived ethicality of managers' own behavior and of deceptive behavior. And it basically shows that misrepresenting your options or your alternatives, outward lying. A lot of people say that's okay. That's okay in a negotiation to misrepresent my position and all that stuff. So I think it's really fair to be a bit careful when somebody says something at the negotiation table. I have noticed, and already said it on the show, but after having thousands of students, every single class, I have several people who ask me, oh, is it allowed to lie? Is it okay if I lie? And I always see it. And I've come to accept that a portion of the population relies on lying as a conflict management method. And I think they learned that as children. The dog ate my homework, just as some sort of like an external reason why I didn't do my homework. Instead of saying, I didn't do my homework, I forgot, they find some sort of an external reasons. And I've seen people get in so much trouble, because they say the biggest one, and it bites you every time if you do that, but it's lying about a job offer from a competitor, because if your current employer says, then go there, then go. You're fine.
Mm.
And you're stuck because it was a lie. You don't have your alternative. You used it as leverage. Now the ZOPA is negative, and now you're stuck. You have to pretend you're going somewhere. And even though we assume that the person, could lie, we don't want to work with liars. Nobody, once it's been proven that you lied at the negotiation table, it's really tough to build this trust. But yeah, go for it, Barney.
Your reputation is probably the most important thing you have, and it arrives at the next negotiation before you do. And we underestimate the intelligence of the other person. Pardon the expression, but we all have BSDs, bullshit detectors.
Yeah.
We can pick up signs that this person is probably not speaking the truth or the whole truth, and that immediately raises question marks and red flags, right?
Absolutely. And so there's a question that's really interesting. I'm going to try to see what techniques it's from. I'm not going to say it. Mr. Hoffman. I can say that. So what techniques do you use to record what you heard during listening? Memory alone or external notation? So Ivana, do you want to answer this one?
Hi, Przemek.
Shemel?
From Czech Republic. Hi.
Okay, great.
Okay.
That's amazing.
Well, I'm always taking notes, right? I'm taking notes by myself because it reflects my thinking, and my notes and your notes, Jan, or yours, Barney, would be totally different. And I cannot orientate with somebody else's note. Now, in an ideal world, you have different roles in the team of people who are negotiating, but the world is not always ideal. Sometimes you are there alone, solopreneurs, people like that. I mean, you can always take somebody with you, but you cannot always. So just write it down.
Notes. What about you, Barney?
One doesn't always have pen and paper handy. What also works for me, my memory is not great at all. And so they say if you always speak the truth, you don't have to remember much. But what I often do is I will rephrase.
Somebody said the same thing.
There you go, Mark Twain.
Great minds think alike, right?
Full seldom differ.
Yeah.
But to just rephrase something of what you said, and then say, is my understanding correct? No, but I also said this, and I also said this. Okay, thank you for reminding me. So that's a technique that one can use if you don't have pen and paper handy, or if it's a very informal.
Or summaries, right? Summarize certain part of the discussion, stuff like that. It's always good.
Yep.
But it's also something that I think is very interesting to protect yourself against lying, and also to make sure you're actually listening. Because I've noticed if I'm trying to remember something the person said, it's blocked in my mind, and I can't really listen to what they're saying anymore because I'm focused on not forgetting the point I'm trying to make. And the second thing is, sometimes when people lie, when they're good liars, it doesn't work. But a lot of people, sometimes when they lie, they're very vague and shifty, kind of like a magma lamp. It's kind of like this thing that's changing. And so you can go back to your notes and you can say, I don't understand. Last time we met, you said X, and now you're saying Y. Can you tell us like what's going on? Just so that they understand that, you're keeping track, you're taking notes and you're keeping track of what they said, and you're not going to just accept some sort of like a morphing truth. Okay, so I think, I could continue on this conversation for hours. You guys, it's amazing. Let's go into the second segment of the show. I have a little jingle that I'm going to try to play if I manage, and we're going to start. All right, everybody, welcome to Master Negotiators React. If you are joining us, my name is Jane Raitt. I'm an associate professor of management at McGill University, where I teach negotiation and conflict management. Master Negotiators React is a segment of the Master Negotiators live show where expert negotiators review various negotiation scenarios captured on video. Negotiations happen a lot of times behind closed doors, right? But now people have smartphones. And so a lot of times people, when they're getting fired today, they record it and they post it on TikTok. Sometimes, one party looks bad, sometimes both, it really depends. And so that's the goal of Master Negotiators React. Today, I'm joined by two master negotiators, Barney Jordaan, who is a professor specializing in negotiation, conflict leadership, and persuasion at Vlerik Business School in Belgium. He has a background in human rights law in South Africa and co-founded a conflict management consultancy. Barney is also an internationally certified mediator and author. Thank you so much for joining us, Barney.
Thank you for having me.
Our second guest is Ivana Sediva. She is a seasoned negotiator with 27 years of C-suite experience at companies including Johnson Johnson and McDonald's. She has spearheaded major business deals and is a forthcoming speaker at NegotiCON 2024. Ivana also offers training in public speaking and the art of influence. Hey, Ivana.
Hi, hello.
So first thing I want everybody to do is go on LinkedIn, in the description of this video, and follow both Barney and Ivana. They post regular content. They're very, very interesting people. So if you want to learn about negotiation, do that. The second thing I want you to do is type in the chat if you're just joining us. Type us where you're joining from, and I'll feature it. If you have a comment or a question, type it in the chat, and we will answer it. So today, we're going to react to a video that I found of a Walmart worker who is fired by his manager for telling a customer. So a customer was asking a question and he said, Google it instead of answering the question. And so that is the reason for being fired, which is a bit spicy. It's a little bit of I don't know how to qualify this, but I'm going to share my screen. We're going to watch the video. I'll stop it at various times. And the goal for us is to try to understand how the manager and the employee are approaching this really uncomfortable conversation, which is, talk about a conflict and getting fired. So let me share my screen and we will do this. Okay. There we go. And we will share it this way. Perfect. So let me hit play.
Go ahead.
The other day, we had a situation, and I asked you your side of the story. I'm the customer that needs the little ATT boxes
Right.
or their password reset.
Okay.
That being said, that I had asked you your side of the story, and then father refused to help me.
Okay, first of all, can you guys hear properly? Is it okay, or is it a bit low? It's not
bit low.
It's a bit low. Let me try. I'll try to do better. One thing that I find interesting is he doesn't seem, a lot of times in these videos, they hide that they're recording. He's not doing that. He's just putting the video, the phone directly there. So a bit of a confrontational approach. What do you guys think about that? Ivana, do you want to say?
I'm sorry?
Oh, what do you?
I was just reading the comment. There is a lengthy comment.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
Oh, okay. We'll go back to the comments right after. I was asking, what do you think about you're about to meet with an employee and they take their phone out and start recording you?
Wow. Honestly, I will be caught by surprise. It never happened to me, even today. And when I didn't fire so many people in my career, but I did some.
Right.
And at that time, to be honest, but she was not in such a position, but I was always very picky in terms of choosing people, which is not the case. You cannot do it in Walmart in this position. So
Right.
I probably, can we actually say you cannot do that? I'm not sure in US whether you can say, oh, you cannot record it without my permission.
I think it depends on the state. There are states that are one-party consent, so you don't need to ask. And then there are states that are two-party consent. So, I think a lot of times you see people who are saying, oh, I'm recording myself for my protection and that kind of stuff. You can't say no, they're allowed to record whatever they want. But I think in the end, it doesn't really matter because people can still record even in secret and then post it.
Yeah.
What are you
sure.
going to do?
Well, anyhow, I think that my answer would be I anyhow always try to conduct in a way like that anybody else would be watching. So
Right. Yeah,
it might be triggering, to be honest, but at the end, I don't mind.
Okay. What about you, Barney?
I watched this clip and because you prompted us what we might be talking about, this particular clip. And what struck me is the boss is extremely calm.
Right.
She listens. She nods. He gets all excited. Temperature rising on his side. She remains quite calm. She asks questions. What she doesn't do much of is just reflect back, but I was
Right.
amazed at how calm she stayed. I don't know if I would have remained that calm with this obnoxious character.
Yeah, he's a bit upset. Let's see how he behaves.
Yeah.
I'm going to hit play. Let's see how he behaves.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah,
I thought it stopped it. Okay.
No. It's just so we can comment.
Okay.
Your words and told her to Google it, which I understand. In the moment you were busy with customers, and you couldn't attend to her right away. But the way that you handled it was not the way that you should have handled it.
What did I do?
You, like I told you when we discussed it, you were being rude to the customer, as she told me. And
So you're taking her word for it?
no, I confronted. I remember we talked about it, and so I got her side, and I said, "Well, let me talk to those associates. What's going on?" So I came and gave you the benefit of the doubt, and the response you gave me was rude in terms of dealing with the customer when we work in retail.
So we do a he said, she said now?
No, this is what you told me. Your personal account of what happened. You told me verbatim that you told her that you, if you can't, you told me, what did you tell me?
Yeah, I told her I don't care. I told her I don't care if she says that I'm rude because I did do my job. I did help her. That's exactly what I said. I told you that.
Right.
And I still don't care. Because she could tell you I punched her. And I don't care because I didn't do anything to her. I helped her.
Okay.
Don't care.
So
I did my
you
job.
can't not care in this business. At the end of the day, you have to take care of your associates. So I understand in the moment, I'm talking, let me talk and like you get for. I understand in the moment you were busy. I understand that. We can't always help everyone at the same time. But the way that you went about the situation was not correct. You can't just tell a customer Google it. If they knew to just Google it and read it themselves, they wouldn't come to you for help. So in that situation, the better route would have been to either ask her to wait until you were done with the customers or to call somebody else for backup. Your words to me were, if she can't read, that's not your problem.
No, I did not say that. Should have recorded me. And I know exactly what I said.
Okay, what'd you say?
I said that she didn't want to read. She wants me to read it for her. We're in the electronics. This is a business where I'm by myself. You're constantly going to be by yourself. You have to be prepared for that. It's a lot of high activity. So for you to say, for me to think that I could just come into my work and that there would be any help, that's not the case. You have to be prepared to be by yourself. And I was prepared to handle everything on my own. I don't look forward to my backup. I don't think the managers are going to come and help me. And I showed her the list. I was very kind to her. I'm on camera going back and forth between customers. 5 times I went to her. At no point did I say, ma'am, I cannot help you anymore. I did not say that.
Okay. Barney, so you were talking earlier about System 1, System 2, and I think for people who are not familiar with System 1, System 2, System 1 is kind of an automatic emotional response. System 2 is a more reflective response where you really think carefully about what you're going to say. He seems burnt out to me. Like, that's the impression that I have. What do you guys think? Ivana, what do you think?
No.
Well, I think that he's not well trained in communication, which is pretty obvious, and he's probably burnt out and overworked and pissed off, and maybe he knows where it is heading, so maybe he doesn't care anymore. On the other side, the manager is, I guess, pretty well trained actually. As Barney said, she's very calm. But what she's actually not allowing him to reflect on that situation. And she's not asking him some questions which would allow him to look at the situation from the different perspective. Because very often we can actually change the perspective by asking about, is there another way how you could approach it? Or you can even show the compassion and ask him like, I was there, what else could I have done so that you could, something like that. So this was totally missing on her side. She seems to be like, okay, I need to deal with this time. Okay, another employee. So she's not very involved in that.
Right.
And I think they are both communicating. She's totally rational, not interested. And he is in the emotions, which is quite an interesting point where she could react, is this last part, where he was actually describing all his problems.
Yeah.
And then she could actually ask him, like, tell me more, or how could we make it more bearable for you guys? Because it's probably not just him, right? And that there is now, at this moment, there is an opportunity to lead the discussion slightly different way.
Yeah.
I think
What about you,
if I
Barney?
can- If I can link in there, I agree that the outcome could have been different. But okay, in the
Yes.
US they have this employment at will rule, so it doesn't take much to get you fired. But I'm not sure what his issue is. Whether it's an attitude problem, they say you point for attitude, you trade for skill. I think in this case things might have gone wrong at the attitude stage already.
Right.
But maybe not. Maybe Jane is right that this guy's got a lot of stress and so on. But what I think the best process now is to say, okay, what can we do to help you? And let's look at some kind of performance improvement plan, or what kind of assistance, maybe medical assistance, health assistance he needs. So the dismissal was quite harsh. But personally, I think his entire attitude, didn't help him much. And I think her behavior is maybe partly due to the fact that she was on camera. So that might also have forced her to be calm and very static as well. But it's not a textbook case of how to ensure that employees overcome their performance and behavior problems. But I don't think, as I say, that's required in the US. So it's easy.
Yeah. It doesn't
really ask much about the context, because what if he just broke up with a girlfriend, or his father has died and stuff like that, and it's very difficult for the manager to react then in a way which is motivational and really leading to the good example, to the good outcome, as you said.
But Ivana, if you lose your job at the drop of a hat, all of that is unnecessary for the manager.
Yeah.
Why go through the trouble if you can rather just terminate the employee? So there's a system problem there, I think. Anyway.
But that's a very, very good point, actually. And we watched the very first time we did Master Negotiators React. We watched this tech employee who recorded herself getting fired by Cloudflare, and millions of people saw that video. What was very interesting is she was getting fired, but the decision had already been made. And so they had this meeting with her, but at the end of the day, what was she supposed to do? So she was fighting back, but it didn't really matter because they were just giving her the news. And I wonder if this is a little bit of that situation where Walmart kind of decided this guy needs to go out, and we're just going to have this 10-minute meeting with him where he can scream and yell if he wants, but at the end of the day, he's fired. It's very, but I agree with you. I'm French, and in France, they tell you, because we have like these very, very long-term contracts where you can't really fire the people without cause. If you're not renewing a contract, lawyers always tell you, don't say why, because then you give grounds to getting sued. Just fire the person. A very interesting comment from Didier, who says, this looks more like two monologues, each one on its own lane, than a dialogue. This is a very good analysis. I agree with that. And I think it's very much system one, system two, which is he's objectively very upset. He's responding back without thinking. He's very, very much like back and forth and saying what he wants to say emotionally. And she is absolutely in control because she knows where she's going. So it does feel a little bit like it's getting cattle to get killed, where, you can be upset if you want, but at the end of the day, this is where we're going to go. Let's see how it goes. We still have 2 minutes.
And so I gave her all the information, step by step, hotspot. I laid my phone down for her so she could read it.
So the thing is, reading something and understanding it are two different things. You might be able to read something and understand. Not everyone's the same way. Sometimes they need that extra guidance, especially the fact that she was significantly older than both you and I. So telling you to read it, maybe she has an issue with reading.
She didn't tell me that.
She doesn't have to. That's her personal business. The point is, at the end of the day, she came to an associate who was supposed to help her, and she didn't feel like she got the help that she needed.
Yeah, I have a job to do, so I really don't have time to be asking for all this help or to be like, consulting for Best Buy. This is not Best Buy where we get a commission to do all this work for them. That's not how it works.
At the end of the day, Christian, we are in retail. We are here to serve our customers.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
So comparing it to Best Buy, if that's how you feel, that's how you feel. But at the end of the day, this situation that we're talking about right now, you do not handle it. And not only did you not handle it correctly, this is not the first time that this has been an issue.
Okay. So 2 things. First, I find it very interesting that he's like slowly turning the camera. I mean, there is something comical about it, because he is like some of his attention is focused on that. That's what I'm trying to say. It's hard to pay attention to everything, but if you have part of your brain that's focused on making sure the recruit, like, you know, the HR person is being filmed, you're not focused on what they're saying. You're that. The second thing is she says, which I think is probably part of the story, she says it's not the first time it happens, right? So, you know, maybe there is a history there. We don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't think, I don't see the point in that discussion, to be frank. I don't see the point. I really agree with Didier. I think they're just kind of like each making their point one after the other. What do you guys think of his approach? How should he behave in that situation?
Well, if I may start, I actually think that people in these positions are typically minimum wage type of positions, or very often minimum education and stuff like that. So I would put more responsibility on her. And now we don't know the context, right? But this is a great learning and teaching opportunity. If this would be for the first time.
Yeah.
If she would react differently, he can learn a lot.
Yeah.
And he can become better. And she can achieve what she wants. That would be my take on that. I mean, he's coming with what he has, obviously. Yeah? So he doesn't know any better, probably.
And he makes fair points. You know, he says he was the only one on the floor, that a bunch of people were asking him questions. He helped her 5 times. You know, those are reasonable points. If it's true, we don't know. I think it all seems to stem from the fact that he made some sort of an angry / demeaning comment, which is Google it, to somebody who was asking a question where I guess they were expecting some sort of professional decorum. But I agree with you, Ivana. This could have been this person could be trained and could be. I mean, this could be improved. But we're talking about Walmart, so you know, there's also that to take into account. What do you think, Barney?
Just about him, he probably could have asked for more help. That would be
exactly
just opening it more in that direction.
I think it's a two-way thing. As they say, when the going gets tough, make sure there's at least one adult in the room. The choice is ours. So I think he also wasn't the adult in the room. I think the attitude he displayed, it doesn't sit well with me. But it could also, you know, he could have said, look, this happened. I'm sorry, I was very busy on that day, etc. That could have taken the conversation in different ways. The tone of the conversation. There's research. It was conducted by the Gottman Institute, where they looked at over 1,000 couples, married couples, and over a 6-year period, and they looked at those who got divorced versus those who stayed married, and they traced all of this back to various difficult conversations that these couples had. And they found that those who got divorced, in 96% of cases, it was because of the way their conversation started. Now, this was marriage related, but I think it's pretty much true here as well. They said you've got 3 minutes. Within the first 3 minutes, you determine where this conversation is going to end. So I think on his side, that's where I think, went wrong. But if I look at her face again now, she also doesn't send the best signals. There's a deadpan, disinterested, as you say, Ivana, and I think that could also, of course, trigger a response, right? We can't always control others' responses to our triggers, but we can control the signals we send to others, because the signals we send determines the reactions we get, right?
And definitely, this is not the equal relationship. Here we are talking about manager versus employee. She has kind of high control over him, obviously. So that's why I'm putting much more responsibility on her, and her kind of entry statements like, I'm not interested in your reasons, I'm standing with customer, stuff like that, like dismissing the other person. It was maybe not heard so well, but this is so important. And if we are speaking especially to somebody who doesn't have the same power like us, they will be defensive in a second, you know?
Your colleague, Andre, is it Andres? There's a nugget there. I don't like the way you're conducting this conversation. If I did the same, we will have an argument. That would have been a good thing to throw in there as well.
Okay,
no, that's a Is it a comment you've seen?
Yeah, it's in
Yes,
the
this is
chat.
not a long one. I got lost.
Oh, okay. I haven't. Hasn't popped up
Yeah,
yet for me.
nothing.
And so, something that I find interesting. I think she's a bit in a sticky situation because she's recorded, and there is. So Frederick was saying interesting to understand the company culture as well. And typically Walmart, overworks and underpays people. And I'm assuming she doesn't want to say, well, duh, you had 5 customers. What do you think? You're overworked, underpaid. Like, that's what we do here. And so they're arguing about that, about the fact that he is overworked. But so she's denying it. And at the end of the day, I think it's just a matter of they don't want the employee to say to the customer, Google it. Like, that's it. That's the bottom line.
But what is really missing is trying to understand the other person and being prepared and thinking about the motivations and pains of the other person. And this is so critically important. So we can make a case for him, but we can also make a case for her. So if you would be on the, I don't know, during the vacations, or some intelligent student would be in that position, they could think, hey, the middle managers in the organizations, especially retail, are so-called sandwich position, because they have pressure from the bottom and extreme pressure from the top, and they are really caught in the middle, and they are burned out very often, actually.
Yeah, this is a conflict that could have ended up in the negotiation with possibly a much better outcome, right?
I agree. I think probably she's not deciding the outcome. And that's kind of the issue, which is she just needs to give him the news. He's arguing that he had no other way to react, but to kind of like try to deal with the situation. But I agree with you. I think she could have built some common understanding. It's totally fine to agree that you were overworked and you had a lot of customers, but that saying that is unacceptable. It's fine. Both can be true. You don't have to do that. So somebody says, Didier says, normative parent, the manager triggers the rebel child employee. No way this can work. Yeah, I mean, there's even in his tone a little bit, it sounds a bit like a defiant, like a defiant teenager or something. A little bit, like, I'm going to record you and like slowly turn the camera, all that stuff. It's a little bit childish. So let's continue. We just have 1 minute left.
I'm going to handle it correctly because I told you that I didn't care that she lied to you, that I was rude. That's where we're at. Because that's ridiculous. She lied to you, straight up lied to you. And I'm sorry I don't have time to stop my lying. And that's a lot of pressure on me. The clock is ticking.
I never asked you to stop your line. When I came to talk to you about it, you had not a single customer electronics. I asked you then, because she was still waiting, can you come and help her? You flat out refused.
Yeah, because she said I was rude. So why would I help somebody that's already upset with me?
She wasn't upset. She just needed extra help, and you didn't.
And why didn't you help her?
I did help her.
You're the free one. I'm not free. You're free. You can do all these things.
Okay, Christian. So we're going to stop it right there. Because number one, you don't know what my job entails, nor do I need to disclose it to you. Number two, that's your area, and we're all responsible for the same thing, taking care of our customers. And so based on the situation, the outcome of it, and the fact that we've had numerous encounters like this before, I am letting you go.
Okay.
So you are free to take it up with another coach or store manager if you so desire. But as of today, I can terminate you.
Okay. Alrighty. Thanks for doing me a favor.
Thank you. Let me see your best to do that.
Right.
All right. So what did you guys think about the way it concluded?
Yeah, I don't know. For me, it confirms that I think we might have an attitude here. Attitude issue.
Yeah.
I mean, I would if I were a team leader and somebody spoke to me like that, I won't be happy. I'm not going to fire the person. But that kind of attitude is not helpful to him either. He's not doing himself any favors with that attitude. No.
Why did he post the video? That's the question that I have for myself, because every single video we've been watching on the show up until now portrays the boss as kind of like the horrible one, which is just by default. People are not going to post videos when they look bad. Like, so they're just going to post the videos when they look good. I'm just a little bit confused because if it were me, I wouldn't have posted it. I would have said, I don't know, like, reflecting on it, I don't know if this portrays me in a favorable light. What do you think? Why do you think he posted it?
It might be the attribution thing, right? If things go wobbly outside, we always have an excuse. I'm late for a meeting because there was traffic. If somebody else does the same thing, I attack their character. So this is probably say, look, I was the good guy at all these excuses. She's the bad person who actually fired me. I think it's an attribution thing here. I wouldn't have posted this either. I think it doesn't do his reputation any good. And news travels, so hopefully he found another job, but not so sure.
What do you think, Ivana, about the whole video?
You mean why he posted it? Well, I think that it might be what Didier said, that rebel child in him, who wants to show that he was right, he was not treated well at work, he was overworked, and then he fought back, and he didn't give up, and he's leaving with a heads up. Like, okay, thank you for giving me a favor. And maybe in his social bubble, it may actually look him good, and he may be getting some positive points for that. Otherwise, I cannot imagine why he would do that.
Sure.
It is possible that he showed it to a few people, and they said, "Good for you, you stood your ground,"
Exactly.
But I think I would have liked for the manager, if she said it's happened numerous times before. I think it's a time where you also want to have your data and your paperwork to say, we already had this conversation on that date. We had the same with a similar problem, kind of like just making her case a little bit stronger. But here again, it's the US.
Exactly.
They can just fire you if they feel like it.
In Europe, it wouldn't look like this. Definitely not.
No. Also, not where I come from in South Africa. You have to do it by the book, but you go through a process to try and improve the person's performance, and dismissal is the last resort. So I think it's the system here that also takes away some responsibility from management. We don't have to worry about these things. It's not our problem, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like a courtesy meeting. Apparently, it's just they meet you to tell you that you're fired. But if you prefer to be fired by text, they're going to do that and be fine with it, because anyway they've made their decision. So it's what it is.
And it is warm.
Yeah, or like God knows, right?
Let's do it.
Yeah, I have 5 minutes. Let's go for it. I'm going to pretend to listen to what you say, and then I'll fire you anyway, right? So it's a little bit like that. Okay, you guys. So this is the end of the second segment for the show. Thank you so much for all of your comments. We are going to switch to the third segment, which is Master Negotiators Q&A. All right, everybody. I hope you guys are doing well. This is Master Negotiators Q&A. My name is J.N. Raitt. I'm an associate professor of management at McGill University, where I teach negotiation and conflict management. Master Negotiators Q&A features seasoned negotiators answering real-world questions from Reddit. A lot of people ask questions on Reddit on negotiation. Not a lot of people answer. And I really like these questions because they portray real-life situations. So we'd say, if this was a family member asking you that question, what would you tell them? What would be the best advice you would have for them? Today, I am joined by two master negotiators. Ivana Sediva has 27 years of C-suite experience at companies including Johnson Johnson and McDonald's. She has spearheaded major business deals and is a forthcoming speaker at NegotiCON 2024. Ivana also offers training in public speaking and the art of influence. Hi, Ivana. Thank you so much for joining the show.
Hi.
And our second guest is Barney Jordaan. He's a professor specializing in negotiation, conflict leadership, and persuasion at Vlerick Business School, Belgium. He has a background in human rights law in South Africa and co-founded a conflict management consultancy. Barney is also an internationally certified mediator and author. Hi, Barney.
Thanks for having me, Jen.
Thank you so much. And we actually have another guest that I haven't shown, but it's my puppy, who's been extremely quiet, for the past hour. So good for her, like she's been great. But yeah, I've had her for the past 2 weeks, and she's amazing. And you have a dog too, Ivana.
Yes, but the big one, right? It's American.
The big one, exactly. Exactly. That's amazing. Okay, so I've selected a few posts. Let me just share my screen and we will answer as many as we can before the show ends. So let me just see this one. Okay. Okay, so this is what we have, the first post. Let me maybe zoom a little bit so we can see a tiny bit better. So this one is negotiating a better raise, and it was posted in r/negotiation. Hello, everyone. I just had my year-end meeting where I had a glowing review, but was told that my total compensation was only 8.6%. So it's 2.4% salary, 6.2 bonus. I was looking for 8.9%. Can you help me out? So what would you say? And in general, just somebody who's offered a bonus but believes the bonus is less than they deserve. What would you advise them to do? Maybe Barney, do you want to go first?
I think it's normal to think that one's worth more than you got, of course. But I think it starts here with the preparation. I would advise such a person to go into the discussions with some data, see what is, if they can find that information, what is the typical policy within the organization? How are other peers treated? Is this in line with that? But also to see what's happening out in the market. Look at inflation. Look at what the market offers for this kind of job in this kind of company of this size and so on. That would have given the person, I think, a stronger leg to stand on at the start of all of this. But now that it's happened, of course, the choice is I do nothing and I stay unhappy about this, or I go and talk about it. And talking about it would simply be saying, look, thank you for this and thanks for the glowing review. I'm a little bit concerned, though, that the increase you've given me was below my expectation. And let me tell you why. Because given my work record, given the inflation, given whatever other data I have, this seems to be below par. Is there anything you can do about it? Is it possible to up it to, it's not a big gap, hey, to this amount? If they say no, say, well, is there a way in which this can be made up in non-monetary benefits, extra leave, for example?
Right.
So because the company might not have the necessary cash to pay what is required, but they might have issues that are of low value to them, but high value to the employee that they could swap. So that would be my suggestion.
Excellent. Thank you, Barney. What about you, Ivana? What would you advise this person to do?
I can just sign what Barney said. It was perfect.
It was perfect. Okay. Do you want to go for the next one?
Oh yeah.
So the next one. Yeah, the next one is funny. It's negotiating with an irrational manager. I have a manager who seemed to want to soak up hours and not give them out to employees if she can avoid it. And in some cases, steal hours. So she writes down hours that so basically, I guess it's a company where, they have like certain hours to give to the employees. Like, you can work 100 hours or whatever. And then she takes as many as she can and apparently doesn't give them to the employees. I want to negotiate more hours until I'm in a position to get a new job. I've been racking my brain about how to negotiate more hours, but how can I rationalize that with somebody who seemingly just wants to take and not give?
Yeah.
So if
I think in these kind of situations, it's always very good to understand the motivations of the other person. And even in corporations, people very often do not understand when the other person gets the bonus. And it's good to understand it about your bosses, actually, and their bosses, because we all have our own motivations. So if I can find out how she can be promoted and whether she really wants to be promoted, how she can get better bonuses on what she's evaluated, that provides me with the information which I need. And based on that, I can actually put together a strategy or plan, maybe rather, to come up with a project or question in the area where I can really help her achieve her own goals. And that could mean more time for me. Because otherwise, we would be back to the discussion about like, I want this, but I don't want to give it, and so on. And you don't want that.
No, that's a really good point. I think maybe irrational manager is not the right word, because what this person, I don't know why I think it's a woman, but what this person is describing is not irrational at all. Like, it's very rational. It's just the boss is trying to take as many hours as possible and doesn't want to give them away. It's not irrational. I mean, it's not irrational at all. But I think, probably what I like about your answer, Ivana, is what you're saying is try to understand what she's trying to achieve. And if we can align ourselves together so that I can help her achieve what she wants and she can help me achieve what I want. Right? Is it what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Barney, what do you think?
I would agree 100%. I think there are two things for me. The one is the fact that there's always a backstory. If you can't explain somebody's behavior, what's the story behind that? We too often take things at face value. We jump to conclusions. We make attributions. This is an irrational manager. Well, what is her backstory? And maybe if I were in that position, I would have done the same. If there's nothing unethical here, maybe I would have done the same. So it's both the framing, how we frame this particular person in the situation, and finding out what the backstory is. And I think that's, I agree with Ivana. If you can start that conversation, say what's going on here. If it appears that there is underhand stuff going on, then I think one should say to her, look, I'm aware of this. I'm not going to try and bring you down here, but I don't think this is fair to the rest of us. Not fair to the company. It's not fair to the rest of us. So how can we deal with the situation in a way that's fair to all of us? It takes courage. Because you don't know what the other person's response is going to be. But if you do nothing about it, you're going to be forever unhappy and disappointed in yourself for not taking that step.
Right. And it's absolutely is what they call in social psychology the fundamental attribution error, which is to say that we're completely disregarding the context of the manager and we're attributing everything to the fact that they're irrational. But in reality, we never know what's going on. I totally agree with you, Barney. Something that I've noticed during the pandemic is people go through so much that we don't know about. We have no clue. This person could be going through money problems, could be going through family problems. Who knows why they're doing that? But I think if the reality is that the manager is creating fake hours and kind of like capturing all of the hours, then it sounds like a bigger problem than just this little negotiation. Then you wonder if maybe the manager has a manager that you can complain to, because that's not proper. Like, they wouldn't be okay with that. But I have to say that it could also be rationalizing from the end of the employee. A lot of times when people don't get what they want, they find all sorts of reasons to explain why they're not getting what they want. Oh, it's because my boss hates me, or my boss is crazy, or all that kind of stuff. When in reality, when you sit down and you have the conversation, you realize why that was happening, and it's not irrational, it's not crazy. There was a reason. If you have an opinion about this, please type it in the chat and I'll relay it on the screen. So let's try to see the next one. It's loading. Okay. So this one is a job offer at a startup pre-Series A negotiation. So this is a really, really interesting one because I see a lot of students get into that situation. So context: I live in New York City and have 10 years of experience in tech. I do not have other offers. Job: founding DevOps engineer, first hire in this specific function. Offer: 200K base, 20K bonus, 0.1% equity. 0.1% equity sounds really low, but I don't know. My initial feelings are that given this is a small startup, the cash is actually pretty decent and in line with the market. I do feel that I could get more equity though, especially since I'm the first hire in a DevOps function, and it's going to take a lot of work to scale this thing from what I've seen. It's also a full-time in-office, and I'm currently full-time remote, so I want to make it worth my while. The reason I really like this is the technology they're working on and the impact that have at this early stage would give me a big leg up in my career. So even if it didn't work out, very likely, my career will still be okay afterwards. I see this as being a rocket ship, to be honest. They already have customers, and from what the founder told me, a wall of money waiting to get in at Series A. How could I negotiate there? I'm thinking pushing for more equity, either now or written in my offer that I'm up for refreshers at a defined interval, every year, promotions, etc. If anyone has tips for getting more cash in bonuses or salary, that helps as well. So this is very interesting because a lot of students are kind of in this situation where you have to negotiate an entire package and they're not sure what to negotiate. So Ivana, I see you smiling. What do you think about this?
Well, I think that the equity is a joke, yeah. But the rest is probably decent, as he said. And I'm wondering what is the tactics on the side of the other founder. And I think that person who is asking should really think hard about what they want to achieve and what are their intentions and so on, and how they see that. And based on that, I would structure I would prepare basically. Now, the second thing what I would do is to look into the market and try to benchmark, right? I from the top of my head, I would say they should be offering at least 10% equity, if not more, depending on how many co-founders are there. But maybe they are preparing the ground to negotiate the cash down if he wants more equity, because it's so low, really. It's really
the salary is pretty
behind
good.
that, I would think. No, not the salary, but the equity is really so low that I would really think like what could be behind that. And I would try to find as much information as possible. So I would really look into the profile of the founder, look into the social networks, talk to people who know him, maybe who know him from the business environment. I would try to get as much information as possible, really, because there might be a possibility to negotiate everything up, but without knowledge or what is behind that, it's really very difficult.
What do you? Thank you so much, Ivana. What do you think, Barney? What would you advise this person to do?
The one thing I was concerned about in the tone of this message is that, well, looks like there's a lot of money coming, so maybe I should be happy with what I get, and I make my increase my worth in the long term. I think that's the wrong approach to take. My first question to the company would be, how did you determine this 0.1%? What is this equity based on? If it's the company's value, what is the company's current value?
Yeah.
If the company is valued very highly, then maybe we should talk about my salary. If
you have 0.1% of Google, then
well, exactly.
Right?
On the other hand, if it's still in the startup stage, well, I want to show my commitment to the company. I would like to have an equity. I think this is really, really below par, with all due respect, because if I calculate everything, this is not going to add up too much over a period of 4 years. If you're not in a position to give you equity now, can we talk about how and when I might gain equity in the future? And can we agree on the criteria for the determination of future equity and so on? But I certainly wouldn't just take this lying down. Your salary is great, maybe I should just be satisfied with this. You should negotiate for your worth.
Yeah. Sorry.
Go for it.
I was thinking about kind of trying to negotiate the plan for increase. But if they are really successful, there will be huge pushback to increase the equity later on. So I think you negotiate the equity at the beginning.
Yeah, indeed.
You have it. It's much more difficult later. Depending on my personal situation, I would try to look at what is my, let's say, minimum requirement for the salary, because yes, it's quite high. And if he believes that actually the founder is under-evaluating the company for now, because really this is so low, this equity what he is offering. So maybe he thinks he's better off giving high salary rather than high equity, thinking about the future. But now for that, I would need to understand much more. But otherwise, I totally agree, Barney, with what you added.
This person doesn't have an alternative. Says, I have no other options.
Right.
So that's another thing you ought to do in your preparation. Shop around and see what's the best.
Exactly.
Maybe this is a great salary, but then you can say, look, I'd love to work with this company for the longer term. Salary looks great, but unless you can help me on the equity side, I'm afraid I might have to think twice before I take this offer. So, but without that alternative, you are bargaining from a very, very weak position.
I remember one of the managers. Sorry, Jane.
No, go for it, Ivana. Go for it.
It just reminded me of some story somebody was telling me. His grandfather was repairing the milkshake machines, and an owner of the restaurant called him and wanted to repair 2 milkshake machines. And he said, well, I can either pay you or I will give you the stock, the shares in my company.
Yeah.
And he said, no, pay me. And you know who the company was?
No.
McDonald's.
Yeah. Okay. That's really interesting. Yeah. No, but so I'm going to read a comment from Didier Shapiro. Very great, very good comment. This questions the goal of the founder. Why would he or she not tie a key developer to the company with decent equity? That's very, very good. And I'd like to build on what everybody has saying, which I really agree with. This is just the sentence I'd be a little bit careful about if a student came to me explaining that to me, because in a past life, I had a company and I was part of an incubator and an accelerator. And I've seen a bunch of people make Excel sheets, valuing their own companies at billions of dollars by changing a few numbers. And then this is pre-Series A. Nobody has validated that this is an actual valuation that makes sense. This is what the founder is saying. And there are a lot of founders who are great at making PowerPoints, at selling you something, saying it's great. But the problem is, what's the saying? 2 in the bush, 1 in the hand, right?
2 birds in the hand better than 2. A bird in the hand better than 2 in the bush or something.
Exactly. And there's also like, don't sell, like in French, we say, don't sell the pelt of the animal before you actually killed it. Like you need to like make sure. So what I don't want to be a naysayer or anything. Maybe this is going to be the next unicorn. I have no clue. But it just seems like this kind of excitement about, oh, money is about to flow in, okay, well, that's what the founder is saying, and the founder has not secured, the first investments. So, if they're already giving you a 0.1%, look into the valuation, because they have to find investors who agree with that. And that's a whole other thing. That's something different.
Can I just add something, Jeremy, if I may, just with a view to the time? We work with a lot of entrepreneurs at the business school I'm at, and the stats are clear that everybody comes into a startup bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and then it falls apart because the founders fall out and they fall apart. So I think for those of us on the call who are interested in conflict resolution, mediation, negotiation, I think there's a niche to work with startups and to help the founders settle their relationship, get the communication in order, make sure that at least they can deal with their conflicts, which will inevitably arise. Because otherwise, a year or 2 down the line, the thing falls apart. So just a thought.
No, this is a very good point. And I think it also speaks about all the skills that a founder needs to have. They need to have so many skills. So apparently we know just from the impression this founder gave that already they're a great salesperson. They managed to convince this guy who's a high level guy that there's going to be a lot of money coming in. It's a rocket ship. Like, this is amazing. But I've seen in my time, founders who are great at making PowerPoints, and that was pretty much it. And nothing ever happened later on. All they were doing was raising more and more money, and nothing was coming out of it. So, be excited. I think it's cool to be excited. I think it's nice to be excited. But if the only reason to have 0.1% is because the founder says it's going to be $1 billion company, maybe it may not happen that way. It may not turn out that way.
If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, right?
It could be, yeah. Okay, let's look at the last one that we have. And I love this one because it's something that I have a lot of students, and I think it's something that a lot of people struggle with. It's not related to work. It's related to having roommates, which some people do have. So best way to go about asking a roommate to turn down music or the bass. What I find very interesting is you think, just go and say, can you please turn down the music, right? Like, that's all you need to do. But most people, myself included, naturally, we have issues with that. We don't know how to bring it up. We don't want to burn the bridge, all that stuff. So here's what this person is saying. So I just moved into a huge house in a quiet neighborhood with 3 roommates, a couple and another guy. We all found the house on Craigslist and didn't know each other up until last week. After living with everyone for a week, I'm realizing that one of the people in the couple likes to play their music over their speakers in their room. I had a neighbor like that before. Everyone else plays things on their phones or headphones. I'm pretty bummed because the reason I moved from my last place is because my neighbor would basically blast his music from his truck. His trucks are directly below my apartment, and I'd get bass bumping music pumped into my apartment almost every night. I would ask him to turn it down, but he would keep doing it. It sucks because I've only known these people for a week and we haven't really talked that much as we're all pretty busy. So I don't want this to be the first conversation we're having as to come across as controlling roommate right off the bat. I think because of my past experience with the noisy neighbor, I'm just very sensitive to specifically bassy music. Like a few times they've been playing their music off their computer in their room and it's totally fine. What is the best way to go about this? I'm thinking I'll probably propose a dinner for all of us to hang out and get to know each other and then take it from there. Also curious if anyone has had a similar situation and was able to find a solution. So the too long didn't read is my roommate plays music over their speakers and the bass carries into my room. What is the best way to ask them not to play it over the bassy speakers? So what do you guys think? Who wants to go first? Barney, do you want to go first?
I'm happy to. This is a classic conflict situation, right? Conflict happens when somebody else's behavior stands in the way of my goals. So the first thing is to act early in these cases and not to just tolerate it, because it becomes more difficult to deal with it if you've allowed it to continue forever. So, so to act early. And that means, of course, not fighting or calling the police and things, but get the conversation going. You don't have to go for dinner. For me, one of the best places to take your conflicts is outside. Go for a walk, especially if there's a bit of green around, because your brain says we're moving in the same direction. There's always something to talk about to break the ice. And then maybe start by saying, hey, you listen to your music. It's not quite my style, but I'm glad we share the love of music as well. This is my music style. And by the way, there's one thing that I need to talk to you about. I love my sleep. I love my quiet time. I love listening to my music. And sometimes I feel your music is so loud that actually I can't concentrate. I can't focus. I can't sleep. I don't want to stop you from listening to your music, but is there something we can agree on that allows you to play your music without disturbing me, maybe at times when I'm not at home? What do you think? Start the conversation in that way. It's those first 3 minutes that'll matter, but don't delay these conversations. It happens in disputes or conflicts in the workplace. We leave it. Everybody else knows about the conflict except the person involved on the other side of the conflict. And it becomes infectious. So that would be my take on this.
That sounds reasonable. That sounds like if I was the one playing the music, not being aware that it's bothering everybody, which can happen, right? We each have different tolerances for noise. Then, it sounds like it would go reasonably well. Ivana, how would you approach that situation?
I like Barney's approach a lot. I would maybe add something like appreciating that they don't do it always already. Like not making them feel guilty or offended, so that they don't need to kind of protect themselves. So maybe including the discussion about that you really appreciate when they do it differently and so on and so on. And that this can lead to the discussion that I may be even willing to kind of sometimes change my schedule if there is something really cool going on and they want to listen, or they have a party, just let me know. And if possible, I can arrange, these kind of things, these kind of approaches to kind of, I don't want to say to give before I ask, but almost into that area, so that they see the reciprocity, that it's not only them limiting themselves, but that you are also willing to do certain steps. Now, you don't want to go that far that you would be seen as a pushover, right? At
Right.
certain stage of the discussion, it's good to show the willingness to contribute to that peaceful cohabiting.
Yeah, I think what I would do if that was my situation, what I like about the approach from the person who posted this is they seem to be very system two. You know, they're not going about it emotionally. They're trying to go about it rationally. They seem to have a bit of an issue with assertiveness because it could have been solved really easily. You know, just say, hey, can I just talk to you about something? I've noticed you were doing this. I think the way I would have brought it is I would have said, you know, I would have signaled before that I think maybe they're a great musician. You know, I appreciate the music. It's fun. If we organize a party together, it would be fun if you could play your instrument, that would be nice. But I would say I'd like for us to have rules in terms of noise. And that just doesn't apply to you. It applies to everybody. It's just about how can we all work together and have rules, because it sounds like when you have roommates, you need rules. You need to have rules about how to live together because we're so different. We all have different schedules. We have different preferences. I'm very, very sensitive to noise, for example, but some other people are not. And so, you know, I would kind of like take it away from just that person and would just make rules that apply to everybody, including myself, which is that I'm not going to play. Right. I think, you know, that's pretty much, I don't know if we have still another one. I'm not sure which is one. Yeah, this one is actually, so that's the last one and then we'll stop. But this one is really interesting as well. Is somebody who says in conflict resolution, and there was no answer, says how to ask someone for space temporarily. For the sensitive people out there like myself, how do you deal with getting overwhelmed in an interpersonal conflict? I find that sometimes I just need to step away for a while. Yet I don't always have the energy to verbalize this. Sometimes I just have to take some distance and then later try to reconnect. Ideally, I like to be able to tell them that I need some time away so that their needs for understanding and care get me. So that their needs for understanding and care get me. I don't understand what that means. I don't like when others ghost me, and so I don't want to do it to others. Do you have any wisdom to share? So how would you tell someone, you know, I tend to be overwhelmed and sometimes I'm just going to take a while to answer, or I just need my space. I feel like you could just say
Exactly.
it this way,
Indeed,
right?
indeed.
That's it.
Like you could just say that. I feel people are, you know, it's interesting. I remember reading on Reddit one day, somebody was complaining about introverts and was saying that introverts, sometimes they take 5 days to answer a text and all that stuff. And I'm an introvert and I'm really like this as well. Sometimes I feel overwhelmed when people are like sending me messages. But there was somebody who said, you know, that they had a friend who was and they just took that person whenever they were available. You know, like if you're available and you have some time, it's fine. But otherwise, you just don't take it personal. And I think it's a good approach. You know, people are who they are. And as long as you tell people that you're more of an introvert, you need to have your quiet time, I feel people are reasonable. What would you guys say to that person as a piece of advice?
Well, I would say that to everybody, to all of us and to myself, we have to overcome our fear of conflict.
Yeah.
Conflict is about behaviors that affect my goal, my interests. It doesn't have to, it's not necessarily a conflict. It's just somebody's behaviors. If it's about behavior, I can address their behavior. If it's about my behavior, I have to watch my behavior, that it doesn't trigger the conflict or make it escalate. I'm in control of my own behaviors. Not always easy. And that's where the system 2 thing comes in. But if we can start thinking about conflict as something that could be a resource, that could be useful, that could create better understanding, I think that's already a step forward. And of course, sometimes a tactical avoidance is great. You look, I'm a bit overwhelmed now. I usually use self-deprecating humor. I say, you know, I'm a bit of a slow thinker, so just give me a moment or two, just to take a bit of a breath outside, and then I'll come back and talk to you. This is just a bit much for me at the moment. So as you say, be frank about it. What the example I always use for people, what do oysters and conflict have in common?
Oysters and conflict?
Oysters and conflict.
Okay.
Some people say, I don't like oysters. Well, that's the obvious one. Or it's tough to open. Absolutely. But the real answer is that a little irritation can create a thing of beauty.
That's a
So
great point.
if you work with a conflict, if you do what we say people should do, listen, be curious, look at the world from their point of view, you can get good results out of conflict. If you don't do that, it can escalate. And of course, we know what happens if conflict starts escalating. But it's that fear of conflict often that sits with us. And there are all sorts of reasons why we have that fear, which we don't have time to go into. But yeah.
So I'm going to steal your analogy, but I'll credit you whenever I use it.
No,
I'm just telling you.
it's not even my own. It's not even my own. So don't credit me with anything.
No, but so I do something a bit similar. Whenever I give a talk on conflict, I always ask participants, what's the opposite of conflict? And they always tell me, oh, peace, harmony, paradise, all that stuff. And it really is interesting because they never say apathy, people not caring, and all that stuff. So there is this underlying understanding about conflict that by default it's a negative thing, and that the lack of conflict is a positive thing. But that's not true. And I really like your idea of the oyster, which is a little bit of irritation, can do great things. It's excellent. Ivana, what would you advise this person to do?
Yeah, first of all, I would tell to that person that they are probably more advanced in the self-reflection and self-understanding than most of people.
Agreed.
Because they understand themselves and they know that this actually makes their life a little bit more difficult. And your first reaction, Jan, it was spot on. Like, just tell it to that other person.
Sounds reasonable. That just sounds reasonable.
Exactly. And it's back to that microdiversity, I always like to say, like, if I ask you, are we all the same? Mm-hmm. Of course we are not. Everybody would understand, right? But do we behave like that other people have the same motivations or fears like we do? Very often we do, right?
Yeah.
And so we think that certain things we don't need to say because they are obvious. But actually we have to say it because we are all different. So I can actually tell it to the other person, this is what I know about myself. And if you just see it and you are not sure what does it mean or whatever, maybe ask me. Finding the way of contract or kind of a password for the situation even can help in these type of situations. This is a big learning I have from the profile test I do with my clients, that just labeling certain things, not in a negative way, but kind of developing a common language,
right,
helps solve difficult situations without escalating conflicts or kind of even bad feelings, which then when they are not expressed, it leads to bad relationships eventually.
Right.
So just talk about it freely, maybe develop a neutral language, how to talk about it if you need to, in a way which is comfortable for both sides, and that's it.
And go for a walk.
Yeah, go for I like the idea of the psychological thing of, or even driving in the same direction or walking in the same direction. I really like that. I think an underlying theme in all of these questions that we've been looking at today has been issues with assertiveness. People have issues just expressing their needs and wants. It's something that I see all the time in the classroom. You have like a feeling that you should do something, but you're scared of doing it, and so you don't, and you feel terrible about it. And then you make a Reddit post asking other people, how can I tell someone that I need some space? So like, your answer is here. Just tell them you need some space. But it's an assertiveness issue. People just don't know how to say it. And I think you guys have brought up really cool ways to say it.
There are two books I always recommend to people if they're struggling with assertiveness, both by William Ury. The one is Getting to Yes with Yourself.
Absolutely.
And
Great
the other
book.
is The Power of a Positive No.
Yeah, William Ury, by the way, just released a new book.
I know, he's new
called
book.
Possible, I think.
That's right. That's possible.
Amazing
He's a
author.
possibilist,
He is exactly. He's a possibilist.
Yeah.
Very good. So we are at the end of the show. Thank you so much, for
Thank you.
both of you for making time for all of us. This was extremely, extremely valuable. If you're in the attendance, thank you so much for the comments. Please go and follow Barney. Please go and follow Ivana on LinkedIn. That's it for me today. So thank you so much for the two guests. Don't forget to sign up for my newsletter so that you're aware of what next events I'm organizing. Barney, Ivana, I wish you an amazing rest of the week. Everybody, I'll see you next week. Have a good one, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you
Jan.
so
Thanks
much.
very
Have a good one.
Ivana, nice.
Have a